So let's talk about the Minneapolis shooting. Now, there are a lot of things going around in terms of people on different sides of the political spectrum coming to conclusions about this shooting based on the shooter's identity, which I suppose is expected. And I'm not really going to comment on that. I really wanted to cover the facts of what we know, and then you can come to your own conclusions. But we are going to be going over strictly the facts. Minneapolis school shooter Robin Westman confessed he was tired of being trans. I wish I never brainwashed myself. Now, to be noted, this is from the New York Post. As of 39 minutes ago, the New York Post posted another article talking about what a quaint little life this individual had, what his house looked like, what his parents were like. I can link that down below, but at the same time, what we see from families from the outside doesn't really mean anything. That's not to say that this person had a great family life or a horrible family life. I'm just saying I don't really think it contributes much to say, wow, his life seemed so great, because what happened happened. So his life seemed so great. That's useless. I don't think that's really going to bring us to any new information, new conclusion, anything useful. So I'll link it down below, but just so you know, that is also out there. Transgender mass shooter Robin Westman confessed that he was tired of being trans and wished he never brainwashed himself in a manifesto posted online before he slaughtered 2 children and wounded dozens more at a Minneapolis church. In a twisted handwritten journal he shared on YouTube before the massacre, much of which is encrypted in a homespun code of Russian Cyrillic script and English words, Westman groaned about his long hair and his decision to transition. I only keep the long hair because it is pretty much my last shred of being trans. I am tired of being trans. I wish I never brainwashed myself, he wrote, according to a translation by the Post. Based on this, obviously, being trans is part of the conversation. That being said, me not being trans, not understanding the trans experience because I'm not trans, there's not really much I can say about that other than the fact that I can only assume that having an identity type of crisis or difficulty, it's already complicated to have any type of identity crisis, even in your 20s, but it must be extremely stressful when you're a teen and when you've made the decision to transition, which in this case seems to have been not necessarily a mistake, but a point of contention or a point of doubt. That's all I can contribute to that conversation because I do not know more about that experience, though I think everyone's trans experience is also subjective, so I don't even think necessarily other trans people can speak for this individual. Nobody can. And also, why would you want to speak for a shooter, realistically? I can't cut my hair now as it would be an embarrassing defeat, and it might be a concerning change of character that could get me reported. It just always gets in my way. I will probably chop it on the day of the attack. Now, I thought that this was interesting because I didn't really understand what reported means in this case, like to who and by who. Who were the authorities here to be reported to in the first place? And also, it's crazy to me that a simple haircut would then be considered as such a life-changing thing that you did, that is worth being reported over. I find that confusing. So I don't know what all of that is about. Regardless, based on these writings, it sounds like this individual felt like they were stuck in a position that they didn't want to be in. That's fair enough, considering, like I said, this is complicated. Obviously, nothing will ever excuse school shootings, no matter what you're going through. I think that much is obvious, but I feel like these days I just have to be very clear about that. Westman, 23, later wrote he regretted being trans and just wished he were a girl. I regret being trans. I wish I were a girl. I just know I cannot achieve that body with the technology we have today. I also can't afford that, he said. Westman opened fire on the Annunciation Catholic Church and school Wednesday morning while students were praying at Mass, killing 2 kids and wounding 17 others before taking his own life. Now, the interesting thing is that, as far as I've understood, his mom worked at that school until 2021. So I wonder if the choice of going for this school/church is particularly because he had knowledge of it, like he'd been on the campus. The fact that the mother worked there, I mean, I guess we could also brush that off because obviously anyone who commits the type of crime that is a school shooting, they're not mentally well, right? So I don't think we can assume that they're going to be logical about things, but it's also an extra layer of confusion here to shoot up a school where your mom used to work. Granted, she doesn't work there anymore, but doesn't that feel like it's close to home? I don't know. That's just my opinion. The other thing is also the fact of showing up and I don't know if this was done on purpose or if it's been confirmed if it was done on purpose or not, showing up when the kids are at mass and praying is particularly perverse, in my opinion, because, first of all, these are innocent people no matter what, praying or not. But it's really heavy-handed innocence when you're going to go to a school where everyone's innocent, but on top of that, they're just praying, minding their own business, and you're going to do that. So there are also pictures circulating of the killers, gun magazines, and equipment generally. So here we have one that says, "Kill Donald Trump, rip and tear." Then there's another one that says, "I'm the woker baby, why so queerious?" Now, some of this, I have to say, kind of reminds me of the New Zealand shooter, the one that quoted or cited PewDiePie, whatever the case was there. Mainly because some of this just seems like meme shit. Writing, "I'm the woker baby, why so queerious?" Now, listen, maybe that's some kind of serious statement and I'm missing the point. But to me, it seems more like meme language, more just kind of like, you might still be making a point, but you're making it in an unserious or trying to be comedic way, I suppose. Regardless, as you can see in the background of these pictures, basically every piece of equipment had some type of writing on it, which I think is interesting because, as was stated prior, there was a manifesto and then YouTube videos, as far as I understand. And the interesting thing about YouTube videos is that those were not taken down by YouTube until all of this occurred. So those were uploaded and were on the platform just chilling until everything happened, and I'm assuming they've taken them down now. Well, I would hope anyway. So then it says, Westman applied to change his birth name from Robert to Robin in Dakota County, Minnesota when he was 17 years old. According to court documents, the name change was granted in January 2020. The petition noted that Westman identifies as a female and wants her name to reflect that identification. But 5 years later, he seemed to have shrunk away from his new identity, scribbling on another page of the notebook, "I don't want to dress girly all the time, but I guess sometimes I really like it. I know I'm not a woman, but I definitely don't feel like a man." Westman's chilling writings revealed his violent fantasies about killing children, including wanting to be the scary, horrible monster standing over those powerless kids. He also glorifies the Sandy Hook massacre, in which 20 school children were killed. So there are pictures of the manifesto circulating, and news sources are also posting excerpts of it. Here you can see it says, "To my family and friends, I don't expect forgiveness and I don't expect any apology. I have to hold much weight, but to my family and those close to me, I do apologize for the effects my action will have on your lives. Please know I care for all of you so much, and it pains me to bring this storm of chaos into your lives. This will affect so many more people than the ones that are immediately involved. To my mother and father, I'm sorry I didn't turn out as you had hoped. You did not fail me. You gave me so much. I truly appreciate the love you have given me. I feel I was raised to be a good person. I've kept those traits of empathy, self-sacrifice," and then it cuts off. I haven't seen a confirmed version. I have seen versions that were allegedly debunked, so we're going to be careful about that. This is from ABC News. Yeah, so another part of it says, "I was corrupted by this world and I've learned to hate what life is. I'm tired of the pain this world gives out." Then this is one of the more concerning parts. It says, "I've wanted this for so long. I'm not well, I'm not right." Now, this is another thing that's interesting and concerning and alarming all at once because this person did end up killing themselves, right? So if they knew for so long that they're not well and they're not right, you'd hope or think that they would turn to help and resources. Now, granted, some people feel like they're beyond help, and that's how tragedies like this can also occur. The thing is, and that's why I also didn't necessarily want to super focus on the other article I mentioned by the New York Post describing the quaint little life this individual had. You know, what we see from the outside doesn't really matter, and clearly here there was a lot of internal struggle. So the fact that I wanted this for so long, I'm not well, I'm not right, I don't know. Those are just haunting words from a now dead person. There's a part that also goes on to say that they're a sad person and those thoughts aren't going away. And then it says, "I know this is wrong, but I can't seem to stop myself." So I don't know what's at play here, if it's mental illness, if it's depression with mental illness, if it's this identity crisis type struggle. I have no idea. The fact, though, that a lot of the equipment used for all of this, the gun magazines, for example, having these statements on them just seems like this person was trying to make so many different statements. We had the magazine that said kill Trump, so that's one statement. I believe other equipment also had various mottos or sayings that go against Jewish people. It just seems like it was very all over the place in terms of what was the final goal here, if there was one, because here it seems like it's an internal struggle, yet what we see is also there seems to be some political ideology behind it. So it's very unclear what the central message is. So here in a second, you're going to be able to see some of the types of videos that were being posted to the YouTube channel, which were a lot of videos apparently, or one video, it's unclear based on how this is cut, of showing guns and various pieces of equipment to carry out this ordeal.
Tomorrow. I'm sorry to my family. But that's it. That's the only people I'm sorry to. Those kids.
So this is another aspect of all of this that I think is interesting. So this is by no means the first school shooter who has filmed themselves or documented themselves to any degree carrying out what they need to carry out, whether it's the prep, whether it's the actual massacre, so on and so forth. That being said, I also think it's important to stop and think about why that's being done, right? Because you could write a manifesto and leave it at that. Here, it seems like there's messaging all over the place, from the magazines to the manifesto to then these videos. There's just so much content there, which is really odd because after a certain point, it's like, how much can you say about all these things or the same things? Like, why is there so much, basically? Especially because here, contrary to the letter that he wrote that I read the excerpts from, here, he basically said, fuck those kids that are at school, which is kind of crazy because as far as we know, those people are completely unrelated to him. There's no direct connection. Like whether he knew them or not is a different story, but there's no like, this was my bully, so I'm going to shoot them. There's no direct understanding of why these kids, why this type of senseless violence, right? And I think that that's also what's confusing in all of this, is that it seems like there's all this messaging, but very little explanation as to what this messaging is for, right? So you'd think that if you're putting out all this information, all these videos of what you're doing, I would know what your goal is, but I don't know what that is. Like beyond just murdering and violence, what is the bigger goal here? As of today, Friday, August 29th, there are some updates that came out this morning, so we're going to go over those. There's an article on NBC News that says Minneapolis church shooter's mother hires criminal defense attorney. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara said, "We have not been successful in talking to the shooter's mother, Mary Grace Westman." Now, this in and of itself is odd because one of the first things that usually happens with shooters is talking to the parents, family, whomever is closely related. Now, granted, depending on family rapport, talking to the parents may not be the first priority, especially if there is a level of distance between them, separation, whatever the case may be. That being said, I find this odd. It's also odd because if we return to what I mentioned prior in the video, she did used to work at this school, so it seems like talking to her would still be a significant thing to do because there may be a connection that the public cannot see. The mother of the shooter who opened fire Wednesday on a Minneapolis Catholic school during morning mass has hired a criminal defense attorney as police say they've been unable to reach her. All of this is odd. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara stated that Robin Westman's family has been cooperating with investigators. However, they've not yet located her mother, Mary Grace Westman. Records show that her residence is in Florida. Then it says, he said investigators have done dozens of interviews with the shooter's family, friends, and associates and have talked to the shooter's father. I know we have not been successful in talking to the shooter's mother yet at this time, O'Hara said at the news conference Thursday. Mary Grace Westman's attorney, Ryan Gary, told NBC News on Thursday that he had no comment at this time. The FBI and police department did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Friday. So as much as getting an attorney might just be, a procedural thing in the sense of you just want to protect yourself and that's fine, I'm also wondering why is that necessary in this case? Because to me it reads more suspicious than not. I could be entirely wrong, but she lives in Florida, not where all of this occurred. I don't know what their rapport is like, but it reads as very odd that you're not responding, you have an attorney, and you haven't really cooperated yet. I just have question marks. Police have not said whether Mary Grace Westman or any family members potentially face charges. O'Hara told reporters on Thursday that the department will continue to try to speak with the shooter's mother. 2 children, 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel and 10-year-old Harper Moisky, were killed. 15 other children ages 6 to 15 were injured, as well as 3 adult parishioners in their 80s. As of Thursday morning, 2 of the victims remained in critical condition, a hospital official said. So on the note of the 2 victims, the 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel and the 10-year-old Harper Moisky, well, Fletcher Merkel's father came out and spoke to the public, so I'll be showing that here.
Yesterday, a coward decided to take our 8-year-old son Fletcher away from us. Because of their actions, we will never be allowed to hold him, talk to him, play with him, and watch him grow into the wonderful young man he was on the path to becoming. Fletcher loved his family, friends, fishing, cooking, and any sport that he was allowed to play. While the hole in our hearts and lives will never be filled, I hope that in time our family can find healing. I pray that the other victim's family can find some semblance of the same. I'm hopeful that all the wounded are able to make a full recovery and return home to their families. And finally, all the people, and especially the children, impacted by this horrific event are able to recover mentally and find strength to live loving, happy, and full lives. Over the past day, I've heard many stories accounting the swift and heroic actions of children and adults alike from inside the church. Without these people and their selfless actions, this could have been a tragedy of many magnitudes more. For these people, I'm thankful. Moving forward, we ask not for your sympathy, but your empathy, as our family and the Annunciation community grieve and try to make sense of such a senseless act of violence. Please remember Fletcher for the person he was and not the act that ended his life. Give your kids an extra hug and kiss today. We love you, Fletcher. You'll always be with us.
So as of right now, that's all that's out there. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. You can also let me know if you think this is being too heavily politicized due to the trans factor. I think it's relevant because the shooter I don't know, because the shooter themselves brought it up, and therefore that's why it's a central element. If it hadn't been brought up, or if it weren't necessarily maybe a point of crisis, maybe it's a different story. But I think it's relevant to bring up in that kind of factual way because it does seem like something was up on that end. Anyway, you guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.